80s are back, baby. All right. I hadn't even seen that yet. I dig that. That's cool, man. So, hey, before I get underway, last week we had a pretty cool announcement as far as we as a church just really feeling led to pound out the remainder of the money that's owed on our facility, the hub down on 203. And so we shared that with you last week, kind of launched that. And part of that was we also shared that on our app, there's a little section called For Our City. That's what this campaign's all about. And you can click on that at any time, and you can kind of see where things are at as we're trying to hit our goals, right? And so we shared in a gasping sort of way that we wanted to raise $775,000 in 7 months, and everybody's heart seized up in their chest and started figuring out if Timberlake was the right church for them now. And everything else. And then we shared that we had already, though, raised $525,000 of the 775, which means it was a whole lot easier, a whole lot more manageable, right? So we just needed to raise $250,000 between now and the end of the year, right? And so from that, kind of sharing that, putting that out there for you all to be a part of, we also said that you can just follow along in the app. You can give on the app. You can also follow along to see how things are doing. I just decided to open up this morning, and just on the app, right? So just since we did this last week, and just stuff that came through this one tile, we've gone from 525 to now 541.9, right? So we are already seeing money coming in for this, which is great, and that's just money through the app. There's people giving through other means and that kind of thing. That'll get tallied every week as well as that comes in. But again, really exciting times, just really exciting to see how this is just going to get underway, and we're going to see how God continues to move in our ranks as a church to retire all of that here in 2018, and then we start moving into kind of the next phase of things, and so just good stuff going on all the way around. So want to just let you know, hey, things are underway. Want to say thank you for your generosity and your grace, and with all of that, I want to go ahead and pray right now and get us underway for the day. Jesus, I thank you that you are a God who loves us, that you're a God who loves us so much, in fact, that you were willing to come into this world for us. You were willing to come and be a servant to us. You were willing to die on behalf of us because you wanted to give us a great gift in yourself. And it's that gift that we get to talk about today. And I pray that as we do so, we wouldn't settle for less than the gift, that we wouldn't squander our lives and miss out on life that you offer. And so I pray today that you will stimulate us, that you will remind us, that you will maybe even dare us to organize our life around you so that we can experience everything that you have for us. And so, Jesus, we thank you so much for your grace and your love and your goodness, and we praise you for our time together today. In your good and perfect name, we pray these things. Amen. All right, so I have come to the conclusion in my own little life space that when it comes to life, there is a great constant, right? When I talk to different people or I just try to be a student of my environment, when I think about the concept of life, most people, especially Americans, seem to, when it comes to this topic, either want a better life or a fuller life. Right, so when you start talking about life, most people are motivated to have this upward mobility when it comes to this thing called life, right? And so our slogans even reflect it, right? Have the best life you can have, or life starts today, or grab life by the horns. We have all these different things, right? Love what you live and live what you love, you know? And there's these slogans and mottos that drive our sense of saying, that's right, life can be more, it can be bigger, it can be fuller. And so we take these slogans and then we begin to apply different tools to make those slogans a reality. So we apply things like the American dream. We say, well, the American dream is going to be the way that I have the fullest life I can have. I can have the good life if I just have this dream become a reality. Or if I have enough fun, then I can have life. If we just have more experiences, more hobbies, more stuff, more trips, more parties, more barbecues, more vacations to really amazing places, if I just have more relationships and more knowledge in my life, whatever those things are, that's going to bring the fullness of life to my life. Now, the question from that, though, is do all those things, all those activities we can engage in, all that stuff we can purchase, all those experiences we can have, do all of those things truly fill us up? Right? If we do all of those things, do we have more of a sense of aliveness as Americans because we engage in more of those types of kind of life pursuits? Does all the advertising pay off in the end and go, yep, gives me what was promised? See, I raised this because the data tells us no. The data tells us for all of the marketing in our world that says this is what's going to make you just more robust, the data says we seem to lack that. In fact, while I was away on a vacation, I read a book called iGen. And iGen was all about the current generation that would be like in high school, right? So they're debating whether they're kind of Generation Z or iGen, whatever else. But it was a whole book just analyzing kind of their existence. And so you take the average high school student, like these people right down here in the front row, and they said, what was true of the average student, this generation? What's true is that this generation has experienced more of the stuff of the American dream than any other generation in history, right? So they've had more experiences, they've had more entertainment, they've had more technology, they've gone to Disneyland, and they've gone to do all these fun adventures, and they go snowboarding on the weekends, and they've had a lot of fill of life. They were in every sport during every season. They were a part of this campaign that said no more bullying. And so the cliques got along a little better and all of that. And so from all of that, the conclusion should have been, with such rich experience in life, with so many things at their disposal, so much wealth even for their lives, they should be the happiest of all generations, right? And yet what the data showed is that they're actually one of the most depressed generations, one of the generations least apt to be happy. They suffer immensely from anxiety and depression. And they're generally a little nervous about life in the real world. For all of the protection, all of the stuff, all the experience, all of the provision, it seems that it didn't actually pay off for that generation. And the reason that is sort of concluded in the book, and it's not a Christian book, but the reason is we basically gave them everything for the American dream and the abundant life, and we pointed them in the wrong direction because they said, for all of that was supposed to make me feel so alive, then why do I not feel alive inside? And it's because those types of things, not bad in of themselves, but if you make them the way that you have the fullness of life, you'll find that it doesn't pay off. In fact, even this week has been an interesting week with Anthony Bourdain and Kate Spade. And you look at these individuals and you go, man, they had everything, right? They had everything, but you know what? Somehow life was so painful for them. They just had to find a way to escape the pain. In fact, I was just watching a little interview with Anthony Bourdain where he was sitting there eating this bowl of noodles, and he says, this right here in this bowl, this is happiness, and this is wisdom for life. And I thought how interesting that he was off filming his show about what's in the bowl, and he said, that's your happiness and that's your wisdom for life. And it's in the middle of all of that he said, nope, it is not paying off. There is not happiness, and there is not anything for life at the bottom of this bowl for me. I mean, you just look at the general statistics right now. In every state in the United States, suicide is dramatically on the rise. We've increased 30% just in the state of Washington since 1999. 30%. 123 people a day have decided that life isn't worth living anymore. And it's like, why? We have everything. We're at the pinnacle of human existence. One click, stuff's mailed to your house. You can have anything, right? You have exposure and experience, and yet for all of that, there seems to be emptiness. There seems to be anxiety, there seems to be depression, there seems to be wanting and longing and yearning, and something just seems out of sorts. And it really seems to come down to the fact that we have leveraged lesser things, saying this is how you will have abundant life. This is how you will feel fulfilled. This is how you will have a sense of completeness. And more people are saying, but it doesn't fulfill, and I don't feel complete, and something's missing inside. See, this all has to do with where we place our love. Where we place our love. In other words, the object of our most potent passion, which is love, that is probably our most potent passion. The object of our love is going to decide the difference between maximizing life to be fully alive or merely managing life until you die. Where you set your love is the big decider in all of that, right? Now, this morning, I want to just go ahead and be clear. I come as a Bible teacher, which means I have an agenda, right? And my agenda is going to be that I think the Bible answers the dilemma. I think it actually warns of the reality and answers how we combat the reality that life doesn't always pay off the way we think. So I think the Bible has all the answers for that topic. I'm going to proclaim that to be true. At the same time, I'm also going to let you know I am, like you, a practitioner of life. Right? And so I've lived now 47 years of life. I've tried a lot of things in life, trying to make sense of my life. And what I've come to realize is that the only times my life is really in the sweet spot is when my love is in the right place. When my love is off-center on other people, other things, what this life can offer me, when my love gets off-center to those things more, then life seems to lose luster, right? But if I have my love in the right place, then it is altogether different. And life is more fulfilling. My marriage is more fulfilling. My perspective is more fulfilling. All the different little nooks and crannies seem better, right? And so that is what I want to unpack this morning. And I want to start with a question for you to just begin to ponder. It's like a Sunday school question, right? It's the initial key to everything. I want you to answer in your own head, why did Jesus come into the world? Just to yourself, why did Jesus come into the world? Because there's going to be different answers to that. And I'm not going to say that any particular answer is going to be wrong, but there's a chief reason to me. And if you're taking notes, we have notes in our app. The chief reason is the first point in your notes. It's Jesus' chief reason for coming into the world. It was to make your life better. His chief reason was to make your life better. Now, I know some of you are like, no, I went to Sunday school. It said he came to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. That's the chief reason he came. I'm like, that's a reason he came, all right. But what's the ransom to? Ransom is to free you from something and to something else, right? So he came to ransom you, free you, that's true, but to free you to an additional thing, a chief thing, right? Others will say, no, he came to die for my sins. And I'm like, yes, you're right. He came to die for your sins, right? But he came to die for your sins so you could have something new that flows out of that reality. Some will say, no, he came to make disciples. I'm like, yes, he came to make disciples, but disciples are people who follow Jesus because Jesus is offering them something as they follow. So I go, there's this ultimate thing. And the ultimate thing we see in John 10:10. It says the thief comes only to steal, to kill, and to destroy. But I came, so he gives his mission statement. But I came, he says, that they may have life and have it abundantly. So I want you to get that in your head for a second. Why did Jesus come? He came to not just give you life, but he says, I want you to have the most abundant life you can imagine. I want you to maximize life. So I've got the secret to life. I've got the purpose for life. I've got the magic for life. I've got you with some direction for life. So I want you to have life, but to the highest level possible, maximized. Now that gets my attention. Gets my attention because he also says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. Not a life, a variation of a kind of life that you can have. He goes, I am the life. That's why Acts says he's the author of life. And Romans 6 says he did all of this and he came and he died and he rose so that we might walk and live in the fullness of life. So I'm driving this concept home because, again, I want us to become convinced of this truth. It's easy for us to sit in church and read through this stuff and be like, that's right, he's the abundant life and author of life, and he's the way, the truth, and life, and I can walk in the newness of life. But then we just kind of leave and we lose sight of that this is what he offers. Because what this teaches me is that he didn't roll in just to squelch our good time. He didn't roll in to take Friday night and make it boring. He didn't roll in saying, you know what, I want to limit your experiences. I want to saddle you with a bunch of rules that are really just nothing more than killjoy additives for your life. He didn't just say, I want to give a bunch of life-sucking demands so that you live compliantly. See, no, he looked and he saw our floundering. He saw our self-harm. He saw our life-robbing habits, our anxiety, our fear, our fatigue. And as the author of life, he says, I'm going to roll in. I'm going to go into their harsh realm, and I am going to unlock for them potential for a life that they didn't even know was possible so they can live life fully alive. In fact, it's this idea that even is at the core of why Redemption Church exists, right? The deepest why for us is that we want to help people believe that life is better with Jesus. We want to help people believe that. Not just affirm it, not just nod to it, not just say, oh yeah, I can see where there's a verse for that. We want people in their bones to get it so that they begin to make all of their life decisions around this truth. Like they're like, wait, let me get this straight. Jesus really can enhance the fullness of my life in such a way that the conditions of life don't wash into my internal person so profoundly that it sinks me, but rather I can have this fortitude inside that therefore I have an abundance of life even when life around me is challenged. Like, is that possible? And Jesus is like, yes. It's what I came to do. I want you to have life in its fullness and realize that life is better with Jesus. Where we start to realize that he is the healthiest way to do life. Because again, he is the author who gives life. Now to get to this, I think I have to help us understand things by way of a contrast. Because we live in this world in which, like a fish doesn't realize it's wet, we don't realize that all the things we're told will make our life full, that actually make our life empty at times. We don't realize that they don't quite work. We keep kind of going to them as though, no, this is going to make me complete and happy and fulfilled and whatever else. And so we don't quite realize that sometimes the tools of our joy are actually anchors that produce our lack of contentment or our sadness or our sense of aimlessness, right? And Jesus kind of speaks to this. He's always kind of letting us know and reminding that, you know what, there's another way to do life that most people do, and it doesn't lead to life. And so he has to remind us and tell us and highlight some of these things, right? Things that we think were going to give us life experiences actually give us life extinguishers. And so Jesus exposes. And he exposes us to the reality of number 2 in your notes, that sin sucks away abundant life. Sin sucks away abundant life. Now, let me define sin for today, right? This is the simplest definition. It's being estranged from God, right? So God's over here and it's being estranged from God and putting in God's place anything else to just represent what he's supposed to be. That's sin. So I'm estranged from God, and I put something else in his place, and that other thing is what I'm banking on to make my life better. That's going to be the core of what sin is really all about. And what Jesus is going to tell us is it's a law of diminishing returns. Right? So the more we try to press into that other thing to give life, the more it kind of robs us of life. It takes life away. But then it kind of brainwashes us in the midst of it too. So it's a little bit like when people say, you know what the definition of insanity is, doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Right? It's like that. So we keep going to the world to pay off, thinking, well, this time, this person's gonna make me happy. This time, this item's gonna make me full. This time, this experience is gonna complete me. And then every time it's like, yeah, it was fine, it was okay, whatever. Sometimes it was terrible, any number of things, but it doesn't quite keep the bucket going up. There's this thing where we kind of do this and this and this in life when we go to these things. It's just up and down, but it's ultimately gonna trend down. And some of us have had those experiences. I remember my grandfather, he said to me once, he goes, the 2 best days of my life, Matt. And I said, what were those? And he goes, the day I bought my boat and the day I sold my boat, right? And he goes, because, I thought that boat was just going to make me completely happy. And in the end, at first it was fun, but in the end it was work, it was this, it was that, and it would break and everything else. He goes, and the best day was when I sold it. Got that thing out of my driveway. And we've had that, right? We've had hey, this is going to be the best thing ever. And then we do it, and then maybe we don't feel as much, right? Because there's this thing in which life just doesn't pay off. Jesus said it this way. He says, take care and be on your guard against all covetousness. For one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. Right? And so that gets to this thing in our notes here underneath the sin sucks away abundant life, which is this. Abundant life is sucked away when I want stuff to fill me up. Abundant life is sucked away when I want stuff to fill me up. Right? That was like my grandfather. He wanted a boat to fill him up, and in the end, it didn't really fill him up. But this is what we do. We go, okay, so I'm gonna want more, and then I'm gonna buy more, and I'm gonna spend more. I'm gonna go into debt more, and then I'm gonna have more storage for the stuff that I bought on credit. And we go into this maddening cycle, thinking this is gonna be our complete ore, but it doesn't complete us. I remember even first year of marriage, Ellen and I. Yesterday was our 28th anniversary. This goes all the way back to year 1. Thanks for that too. Pam's like, that's so awesome. All right, so, right. But I remember our first year, we moved to Spokane, and Spokane had this thing called snow. And I grew up in Arizona. We didn't have that, right? So not very easily. But I snow skied, and so I could go to Mount Spokane for $10, right, for a lift ticket all day long. This was way long ago, right? And so I needed to get a set of skis. I just needed and I knew, man, this is going to be so awesome. Olin DTSLs, they were orange, they were sweet, they were awesome. I was going to get them, and Ellen's like, I don't know if we can make it work. I'm like, no, I'm telling you, this will make me so happy inside, right? And I remember I bought those skis, and oh man, I was happy. Went up the first day, man, I was happy. Loading them into the car, and then I realized, how much did I just spend on these? Right? This young, broke couple, where I was just so certain this was going to make me complete, and I'm like, wow, we just spent a lot of money, and while that was fun, is this feeling going to hold up? Especially knowing how much they dropped in value simply because I clipped them on my feet. It's worse than a car. Right? I gave those skis to Goodwill. I recently saw them at Goodwill. I think I paid $800 for those skis back in 1990 or 91, and they're selling them for $12.95. What an awesome return on investment that was, right? So, but that's how it happens. We kind of think these things are going to be great, but then they wear off, they lose their luster, whatever else. And so we go, okay, I get it. Stuff doesn't pay off. So maybe instead I'm going to go for another thing, which is stimulation. Maybe that will pay off. And that's the second point. Abundant life is sucked away when I want stimulation to fill me up. Stimulation can be people, can be trips, can be experiences. It can be hobbies, substances, sex. There's all kinds of stimulus that we tend to run to. And we think that, man, all that stimulation is going to give me the fullness of life. Now, again, am I saying things or experiences or trips or hobbies or events or whatever, am I saying all those things are wrong? No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying, though, is when we begin to think that that's what really constitutes abundance or being fully alive, those things can't hold the weight of that. And certainly stimulation that is unhealthy and destructive can be even more life-sucking. In fact, Paul said this in 1 Timothy chapter 5. He says, she who is self-indulgent is dead even while she lives. Right? She who is self-indulgent is dead even while she lives. We think, nah, if I just grab life by the horns and I live it to the fullest, I'm going to be fully alive. Paul says, no, you don't get it, all that self-indulgence. It just starts to suck life from your life. It just does. In fact, there's a story Jesus tells about a son who comes to his dad. He says, Dad, I've decided I'm going to go off, make my own way, but I'm going to make my own way with your money, all right? So, Dad, I want my inheritance now so I can go do what I want to do. And the father is a lavish father. He's a prodigal father, in fact. That's all prodigal, it means lavish. So the father says, all right, I'm going to lavishly give you all your inheritance, and you can go do whatever you want. And that son, he goes and he lives lavish, and he's a prodigal son. And he lives life big, right? He's got parties, he's got friends, he's got women, he's doing it all. He's getting all the stimulus in for life, right? And slowly his life wears to nothing. And he comes back to his father, just hoping to get a job on the farm. But his father is a lavish father and lavishes him with love and has a party and everything else. And then the brother of the son that went off and did craziness comes very self-righteously. And he's like, I can't believe that you're doing this party for your other kid. He's a jerk. He took your money. He lived like an idiot and everything else. And then this is what the father says. He says, son, you're always with me and all that is mine is yours. It was fitting to celebrate and be glad, for this brother of yours was what? Was dead. And now he's alive. Right? He was lost, but now is found. I highlight that because, again, notice how the father sees the son's lavish living is death. When you're wanting this life to bring you life, the father already knows what it does. It just brings death. It brings emptiness. It brings decay. It doesn't pay off. And this is the lesson that Jesus wants us to understand, that apart from the life giver, life wears down. He's got to be the source. That's why, number 3 in your notes, the key to abundant life is reorienting our love toward God. We have to reorient it toward God, right? Because if our love and devotion to stuff or stimulus was to be filling us up, you know what? Then we would see happy people everywhere. Right? Especially here in the Pacific Northwest, right? We've created this kind of weird little microcosm where people do pretty well financially here in this particular region, right? Lots of tech jobs and other things. So people are well off. People have access to all sorts of things, right? So their kids can go to college and they can go on great trips and they can do all this stuff. So we should live in a place that never struggles with depression. Never struggles with anxiety, never struggles with fear. Because again, we have everything that life has to offer in our little liberal utopian society called the Pacific Northwest. Right? We should have it all. But is that what we see? No, we see, again, we've gone up 30% in suicide rates as a state. We see people who are constantly going to a physician because they're trying to figure out how to deal with their anxiety, how to deal with their depression, how to deal with their fear. We see people that are constantly turning to substances, just self-medicating to deal with the stuff of life. And so clearly, having everything in life doesn't work. We need to go to the author of life. We need to do things differently. And when I say that, I want to be clear. What I have found in my travels is I do meet a lot of people who life's just let them down. But the people that I find consistently have this effervescence about them and this sense of kind of overcoming the stuff of life and still with joy and peace and everything else. It's people who really take their faith with Christ like super seriously. I don't mean like religiously seriously. I mean like personally, desperately seriously. Right? So they don't just kind of treat their Christianity as this thing that I do on Sunday and I pray before meals or whatever else. No, it's those people that are like, man, I am all in. Whatever this thing is that Jesus offers, I am all in. I'm going hard after him. I want him to dictate everything in my life. And from that, they seem to have this fullness that is just unique. Even when life is hard, they still have the fullness because they've gone all in on this. Now, Jesus builds off of this idea way back in Deuteronomy, all right? So in Deuteronomy chapter 30, starting in verse 2, it says this: Return to the Lord your God, you and your children, and obey his voice and all that I command you today with all your heart and with all your soul. Why? So that you will love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul, that you may live. Right, so here's what I dig about this. Here's what Jesus is going to build off of, because he's going to say, hey, that's the greatest commandment. This is the one we all want to obey. If there's one thing you do, this is the one you want to do, right? And so you see a trend there. Right? How do I get back on track for a full, abundant life? Well, first of all, you return to the Lord, right? So if sin is saying, I replace God with other stuff, then it's saying, all right, I'm not going to let the other stuff, and this is true for Christians as much as anybody that would not be a professing Christian. It's easy to dethrone God for stuff, right? Or stimulus or whatever. So the first thing is return to the Lord, right? So that's the first step. Next is whatever he tells me to do, that I'm going to do. Why am I doing that? Because it reorients my love. So if he says, you love your enemies, I love my enemies. If he says, let go of the things of the world, I let go of the things of the world. Why? Because it changes then my orientation toward God to one of love. And when I'm doing that, it results in life. You live. And when it says you live, it doesn't simply mean your heart continues to beat and you have breath in your lungs. It means, no, you can finally breathe in life. Your heart beats anew for new things in your life. There's a fulfillment that takes place through this. And the reason is because it gets us back to our design, right? When we think about the Bible, we see in the earliest picture, the first chapter of the first book, we were designed to emulate God, right? We were designed to manifest his image in our lives. So when we live as God is, then all the more we're emulating his image. We're doing what we were built to do. When we're not seeking to love God with all of our heart and with all of our soul and him be first, we're getting away from what our design was. And the further we get away from our design, the more things don't quite work right. But when we align with our design, that's when we are unleashed for a greater life. So, for example, I have a friend of mine that recently adopted a greyhound. And that dog is built to run. You know what that dog is not built to do? Sit. It physically cannot sit. She just sort of like rolls over to get on the ground. She can't sit like a normal dog. She's not built to sit. But that dog gets up to 40 miles an hour like in 3 strides. Like just because that dog's built to run. And when that dog's running, that's when she's happy. When you try to get Lucy to sit, she's looking at you like, are you insane? I can't sit. We're like, well, let's do some stairs. She's like, are you crazy? I can't do stairs. I'm built to run. We also were built to convey God's image and likeness, and therefore anything less is outside of our design, and from that, we don't feel as complete. Right? This is why in 1 John chapter 2, there's this passage that I think we sometimes, we read it like rules. It says, do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh and the desires of the eyes and the pride of life, it's not from the Father, but it's of the world. It's from the world. He says, and the world is passing away along with its desires, but whoever does the will of God abides forever. Now, I think we tend to look at that and say, see, there's rules again. Here's what I can't do. I can't be in the world. I can't be of the world. I can't enjoy the world. That's not what he's trying to get at. This is a thoughtful warning. This is a thoughtful warning that says, it's decaying. If you make your investment into stimulus and stuff to give you life when the stimulus and stuff is decaying, can you get anything from something that's decaying? Like he's just trying to let us know in advance, like, man, if you make your investment there, it's just so not going to pay off. I mean, look inside like the vegetable drawer of your refrigerator when you let something spoil. Everything that's touching it begins to decay too, right? Like the one thing begins to decay, it's like your lettuce is decaying, and then pretty soon you're like, wow, my onions are decaying with my lettuce, and it just spreads, right? You just can't pull from decay. That's what he's getting at here. It's like you want to reorient toward God, you want to have your love set on God, and you want to obey this because, man, life isn't going to give you what you're looking for, right? And so Jesus and the Bible writers are all saying the same thing, man. You want to let go of the things that take away life, and you want to cleave to the things that give life. Makes perfect sense. But it's not easy. This is the thing I've ultimately learned about all of it. Makes perfect sense. Simple concept. But it's not easy. Because as Christians, we still have to go through detox. We still have to kind of relearn some things. We have to let go of certain priorities. We have to spin our perspectives a bit. And we have a tendency to drift back in, right? And so it just takes a certain level of effort to really maximize the life that Jesus is offering. No wonder even when he gave the upgrade option, right? This is what Jesus said. He says the gate toward this whole thing is narrow, and the way is hard that leads to life. It's hard. So I don't want to pretend like it's not, all right? Especially when you're first trying to get your bearings on, okay, I'm trying to let go of this life and pursue this life that Jesus offers me. I mean, at first it feels like it's unlife. In fact, I'm going to share something right now that I feel like I should grab my man card and give it up. I started watching a show with my wife and kids called Khloe Kardashian's Revenge Body, right? And card gone. All right, so and it's the show has got the worst title, right? But it's just really a person that says, you know what? I've not been eating healthy. I'm not physically fit, and I'm going to be on the show now so that I can reorient my life around those things, and I can have revenge on an old boyfriend, girlfriend, family, myself, whatever. Just like I'm gonna prove that I'm a different person. And so they're like, awesome. We're gonna give you a personal trainer. We're gonna give you a nutritionist. Great. What does that look like? Well, basically everything you've known about your life ends today. That's what they do. So they're like, no more sugar, no more liquor, no more couch potato, no more, like you're gonna eat this way. It's gonna be real foods, believe it or not. If it comes out of a box or a bag, you're not gonna eat it that way. You're gonna real food, vegetables and everything. And then we're gonna put you on this exercise regimen. And everybody at the beginning of the show, it's the same thing. I don't like this, this is awful. But why are they doing it? Because they know that the life they've had, while in one sense is familiar and easy and comfortable, is not been the life they want. So they go through this painful process to transition into a different way of living. By the end of that show, I've never seen a single person that says, you know what, this was awful. Like in the end, I hate that I lost weight. I hate that I feel better. I hate that I'm healthy. Right? Everybody's like, man, I can't believe that was the life I used to have. Was it fun to get here? No, it took time. Now would I trade it? No. Now am I used to it? Yes. Do I want to grab the bag of potato chips now? No, because I've relearned. And I've learned that this life is a healthier life than the life that I had. My point being, it's not easy. Right? Diet and exercise changes. And so if we're going to have this life that Jesus offers, this is what he said, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself. Take up his cross daily and follow me. For whoever would save his life, they're going to lose it. But whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. So again, he's making the offer for life. He says, if you follow me, you're going to have life. But here's the thing. To have the life that Jesus offers, you have to follow the rules that Jesus sets. No different than the Khloe Kardashian show. You're not going to get to this place by changing the rules of the trainer and changing the rules in the nutrition, keeping it the way you want it, and getting to your goal. It doesn't work that way. You follow the rules of the one who teaches you. And so with Jesus, he sets the rules. But they're rules that give you freedom, not that take freedom away. In our material, we have these fit principles, right? And when it comes to loving God and following Jesus, we call these people fit people, followers in training. And from this we say fit people, they know God personally. Fit people pursue repentance and obedience consistently. Fit people desire to grow spiritually. And fit people interact with God daily. All of these things are critical for us to experiencing this maximized life that Jesus talks about. Know God personally. That's just simply saying, you know what? I see my need for Jesus and the gospel, and I have sin, and he's got life, and he gives his life for me so that I can have life in him. Like, yes, I need to know him personally. From that, then I repent and obey in a consistent pattern. We're going to all fail, but we keep coming back and saying, I failed, forgive me, help me to do better, let me obey you more. From this, we desire to grow spiritually, right? To be spiritually minded, because when we're spiritually minded, it produces this thing called fruit of the Spirit, love and joy and peace and patience and kindness, all things that people want in life. And then we interact with God daily through prayer, through word, through just, I want to connect more with you so that you have more life in me. Because all of these things they do, they connect us to the author of life, they infuse us with the abundance of life, they replicate in us things that really draw out deep life. And all of that then just again changes in us this thing that we want, which is abundance in life. In fact, you see it with number 4, the abundant life found in fit living. Jesus said a series of things really rapidly in the Gospel of John. He says, whoever has my commandments and keeps them, it is he who loves me. And he who loves me will be loved by my Father, and I will love him and manifest myself to him. So he's like, when you're starting to obey me, you're setting your affections on me, what you're going to find is that I begin to show myself to you. It becomes more impassioned. It's not just like, okay, here's my religion, this is what I do. He says, no, this is where you begin to sense me in your life. When you begin to sense me, then what happens? He says, peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives. He says, from this let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid. You know what most people want in their life is peace. I guarantee you, these people that we heard about even in the last week that took their own lives because life was just too painful to keep living, they were desperate for peace. Desperate for it. Had all the wealth of the world, had all the fame they could ever want, but they didn't have peace. And Jesus is like, man, I have peace for life so that you're not afraid. He goes on to say, if you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. These things I've spoken to you, why? So that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be full. This is the other thing people want in life. And Jesus is like, hey man, I'm just walking down the list, man. I'm going to manifest myself to you. I'm going to give you peace. I'm going to give you joy. Paul grabbed a hold of this in Romans. He said, for a mindset on the flesh is death, but a mindset on the Spirit is life. And this is like a flywheel in our lives, right? So the more we seek and press and obey, the more he's manifest, the more we feel peace, we feel joy, the more we feel joy, we feel life, and it spins back up to saying that I want more of the source, which is him manifesting in us. This is why I say loving God is the center of abundant life, and Jesus came to give that very thing. I see this with my friend Paul in his own life. He had done life, had all the degrees, all the accolades, all the fame, and it wasn't paying off in any way. And so he says finally in Galatians, I died to the law that I might live to God. I stopped doing all that stuff. He says, I've been crucified with Christ, and it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. He says, because of his presence, this life I now live, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. And because that was Paul's existence and reality, he says then in Philippians, he goes, man, doesn't matter if I have everything, doesn't matter if I have nothing at all, it doesn't matter if everybody's against me or everybody's for me. He goes, I've realized that I have found the secret to living abundantly. I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Right? His life was not dictated by the conditions of the world. His life transcended that because his life was found in the life of the author of life. Let's pray together. Jesus, I ask of you to compel us to this type of life, to compel us to reveal to us what it is that you are doing and what it is you are offering. And that, as I even prayed last week, we won't poke around at the edges, that we won't just settle for the casual Christian experience, and then we find that we're tossed to and fro by the things of life and easily disrupted, but rather we would go all in to the abundance that you promise and offer, that maybe we just sometimes miss out on just because we don't really apply the effort. We spend hours a week on all the other stuff and minutes a week on you, and then we read these verses and they seem distant. I pray they wouldn't be distant, but they would be realities, that they would be things that we testify to, that we might experience you and the fullness of life that you offer. In your name, amen.